How could I have been so blind? The whispered words slipped through my clenched teeth, barely audible over the thrumming bass of the music. But I heard them as clear as day, the hushed voices of my fiancé Nolan and his coworker Marissa, tucked away in a secluded corner of the crowded bar. "We can't keep doing this. It's too risky. Harper is getting suspicious," Marissa murmured. Nolan scoffed. "Don't worry about Harper. She's so focused on the wedding, she doesn't see anything else. We just need to be more careful until the honeymoon. Then I'm all yours." Their laughter twisted like a knife in my gut. I stood paralyzed, half hidden by the shadowed hallway just steps away. How long had they been sneaking around behind my back? I thought about our life together, the late nights at the office, the last-minute business trips, the locked phone that was never out of his sight. The signs were all there, but I had turned a blind eye, too lost in the fantasy of our perfect future. An icy rage flooded my veins, wiping away the shock. Clenching my fists, I stepped from the shadows. "Well, it looks like Harper is a lot more observant than you thought," I said sharply. Nolan jerked back, eyes widening. "Harper, this isn't what it looks like." "Save it," I snarled. "I heard everything. How long have you been sleeping with her behind my back?" Marissa paled. "Harper, you don't understand. Did you think I was just some naive fool you could walk all over?" I stepped closer, glaring into Nolan's panicked eyes. "I gave you 5 years of my life. We're supposed to be getting married in 2 months. Nolan held up his hands defensively. "I messed up, okay? But it didn't mean anything with Marissa. It was just a mistake." Desperation tinged his voice. Red-hot rage seared through me. "A mistake? Weeks, months, maybe. Was our entire relationship a mistake?" "No," Nolan exclaimed. "I love you, Harper. I always have. Things have just been so stressful planning the wedding, and I cut him off. "So this is my fault?" I gave a harsh, incredulous laugh. "You made a choice to betray me over and over again, and now you'll have to live with the consequences." I turned on my heel, pausing at Marissa's tearful voice. "Harper, please." Glancing back, I met her watery gaze. "You're done too," I said coldly before disappearing into the crowd. Pushing through the drunken revelry, I made it outside before collapsing against the cool brick wall. The dam holding back my anguish broke apart in heaving sobs. How could I not have seen the deception? The late nights, distant attitude, he'd played me for a fool. My hands curled into fists and I slammed them back against the bricks, pain mingling with fury. I'd given that cheating snake everything, my trust, my dreams, my future, and he'd thrown it all away without a second thought. The door swung open, spilling noise and light into the alley. I looked up to see Nolan's sister, Ava, her gaze clouded with concern. "Harper, what's going on?" Fresh tears blurred my vision. I told her everything, the overheard conversation, confrontation, all of Nolan's lies and betrayals. Ava's expression darkened, mouth thinning into a grim line. "That bastard," she hissed. "I knew he could be manipulative, but this—" She pulled me into a fierce embrace. "I'm so sorry, Harper, but we'll make this right, I promise." I clung to her, the seeds of a plan taking root through my anger and pain. Nolan had shattered my trust and derailed my life without a second thought. Now it was my turn to bring his perfectly crafted world crashing down. He deserved nothing less than utter destruction for what he'd done. As Ava and I huddled in the chill night air, the beginnings of my revenge took shape. Nolan had no idea the storm coming for him, and once it arrived, his life would never be the same. We need more evidence, something undeniable. Ava's voice was sharp, each word clipped with anger as we sat across from one another in the quiet cafe. I stared into my cooling coffee, mulling over her statement. It had been 2 weeks since that awful night at the bar when my world came crashing down. 2 weeks since I'd confronted the painful truth. My fiancé Nolan had been cheating on me with his coworker. In the aftermath, I'd oscillated between heartbreak, rage, and a creeping sense of self-doubt, wondering what I'd done to push him away, how I could have been so oblivious. But Ava's fierce support kept me from spiraling too deep into despair, and together we began gathering intel on Nolan's betrayal, fueled by a need for revenge. "You're right," I finally responded. "It can't just be our word against his. We need hard evidence to back up the claims." Ava nodded sharply. "I'll reach out to some PI contacts, see if anyone can tail him discreetly." She paused, face twisting in anger. I know my brother, charming and ambitious, but soulless and narcissistic underneath. He won't admit to any wrongdoing unless his back is against the wall. I swallowed against the lump in my throat, thinking of the man I thought I'd known for 5 years. Had it all been an act? Just a ploy to get what he wanted from me? Pushing those painful thoughts away, I refocused on the task at hand. Maybe there's something on his phone or laptop, I mused. Conversations, photos, calendar entries about meetups. But he guards that phone like a hawk. There must be a reason. That snake won't let either out of his sight, but it's worth looking into, Ava agreed. Over the next few days, we discreetly investigated, aided by close friends who were just as horrified by Nolan's actions as we were. Lucas, a tech whiz, helped me recover deleted texts and files from Nolan's laptop one night when he was working late. Andre, an amateur PI, tailed Nolan on his business trips, providing photos and notes on his movements. Slowly, the evidence mounted. Racy messages and photos exchanged, suspicious charges and destinations, entire afternoons spent at Marissa's place. With each discovery, my anger and hurt swelled like a cresting wave. 2 weeks later, Ava and I met again. Files and photos spread before us. The content condemning my ex-fiancé lay undeniable. Business trips that were really romantic getaways. Lavish gifts purchased with money diverted from our joint account. Explicit plans to continue his affair even after our wedding. Red-hot fury lanced through me. He didn't even care about trying to hide it well in the end, I bit out. Ava shook her head in disgust. He got sloppy, too confident you were still blindly in love. She reached across the table, grasping my trembling hand firmly. It's time, Harper. We have everything we need to dismantle his perfect lies. Her eyes blazed with wrathful purpose. Let's tear his world down. I took a deep, steadying breath, the anxious anticipation in my chest hardening into resolve. She was right. The time had come. Once the evidence went public, Nolan's sterling reputation would be no more. His professional contacts and social circles would abandon him. The life he'd built on lies and manipulation would burn. Our plan wasn't just vengeance. It was justice. Nolan deserved to feel the pain and humiliation I'd endured. With Ava by my side, I knew I could finally make him pay for his betrayal. Let's do it, I said, voice steady. Nolan's judgment day was coming, whether he realized it or not, and I could hardly wait to watch his world unravel. How could he do this? Mia asked, delicate features etched with dismay as she stared down at the evidence splayed across my kitchen table. I shook my head, throat tight. I don't know. I thought I knew him, but... I trailed off with a bitter laugh. Around me, my closest friends murmured in shared outrage as they learned the full extent of Nolan's betrayal. Lucas's face was stony, jaw clenched tight as he flipped through the explicit photos and messages. This guy is lower than scum, he bit out. I never liked him. We have to expose him, Andre declared vehemently. Let everyone know what a lying, cheating snake he is. Mia grasped my hand, eyes gleaming with angry tears. You didn't deserve any of this, Harper, but we'll make sure he doesn't get away with it. I squeezed her hand gratefully. Having my friend's support through this meant everything, keeping me from feeling isolated and adrift. Together we could overcome Nolan's cruelty. Ava stepped forward, expression set with determination. Here's the plan. In 2 weeks, Nolan has that big awards gala. All his colleagues and connections will be there, plus plenty of press. Her eyes flashed. We reveal the evidence publicly, ruin his big night and his reputation all at once. The others nodded firmly, murmuring assent. I took a deep breath. It'll completely undermine him right when he thinks he's untouchable. My voice hardened with resolve. This was the only way. He had to face consequences. Over the next week, we ironed out the details. Lucas would put together an incriminating slideshow to display Nolan's misdeeds. Mia would discreetly reach out to attendees to hint at an impending revelation, whipping up anticipatory gossip, and Andre would provide security, ensuring I could speak my piece without interruption. Meanwhile, maintaining the facade of normalcy around Nolan grew increasingly difficult. Pretending not to notice his frequent, furtive phone checks, resisting the urge to confront him with the mound of evidence against him, I placated him with my wedding planning enthusiasm, lulling him into continued complacency. 2 nights before the gala, Ava stared at me from across our usual cafe table. You know this means the end, right? Your relationship, the wedding, all of it. Her gaze was sympathetic but firm. I met it unflinchingly. I know. As soon as we do this, it's over. No going back. I thought of the life I'd envisioned with him, now just ashes and dust. My chest ached, but I firmed my resolve. It has to be done. She nodded once. Then let's bury him. The hours slipped by too quickly over the next 48 hours, my nerves built despite my best efforts, my stomach churning with anxiety and anticipation. Beneath it lay iron-hard purpose. I refused to let doubt creep in now. The night of the gala arrived in a blur. I dressed with precise, mechanical motions, donning an elegant emerald gown. My hands didn't tremble as I fastened Nolan's cufflinks, gazing at the oblivious set of his handsome, lying face. Tonight, his duplicity would be laid bare for all to see, a prospect that should have thrilled me. So why did my heart feel so heavy in my chest? Shaking it off, I steeled myself as we entered the glittering event space, Nolan's colleagues greeting him jovially, oblivious to the brewing storm. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Ava and my friends subtly positioned among the crowd. The ballroom lights dimmed, and Nolan took the stage to accept his award. Beaming out at the applauding audience, he had no idea his world was about to crash down around him. My resolve hardened to steel. The time had come. Justice would finally be served tonight. The deafening roar of the applause died down as Nolan grinned and waved from the stage, basking in the praise and accolades. Bile burned in my throat, and I had to turn away, schooling my face into neutrality. Just get through this evening, I told myself. His fall will come. Nolan descended the stage steps, and I moved to meet him, mask firmly in place. Congratulations, I said with manufactured warmth, letting him pull me into an embrace. Your big night. I'm so proud of you. He smiled, eyes crinkling. Couldn't have done it without your support, babe. He leaned in for a quick kiss, and I fought not to recoil. This was the last time I'd ever have to pretend. We circulated the gala floor, Nolan accepting enthusiastic handshakes and claps on the back from well-wishers. He was utterly at ease, confident and charming as ever. The same traits that had roped me in 5 years ago, before I uncovered the viper underneath. Across the room, I caught Ava's eye. She gave an almost imperceptible nod and slipped away into the crowd. Showtime. I murmured excuses about freshening up and detached myself from Nolan's side, weaving swiftly through the tuxedos and glittering dresses. My heart hammered against my ribs despite my efforts to stay calm. I couldn't afford to waver now. In the restroom, Ava and Mia were waiting, faces taut with anticipation. Andre's got security in place and Lucas is setting up the presentation, Ava said briskly. We clear on the plan? I nodded, throat tightening. In 15 minutes, I'd be publicly decimating the reputation and career of the man I'd once planned to marry, the man who had betrayed and humiliated me without remorse. My nerves surged, but I forced them down. No going back now. Let's finish this, I said steadily. The next quarter hour crawled by. I pasted on a pleasant smile, making small talk with other attendees while watching the time, waiting for the invisible tripwire to spring. At last, Lucas caught my gaze from across the room and gave an almost imperceptible nod. My cue. I maneuvered subtly through the crowd as Lucas dimmed the lights, the television screens around the room flickering on. Partygoers glanced up curiously, the buzz of conversation quieting. Nolan stood near the front, brow furrowing in confusion. He caught my eye with a questioning look which I met evenly, giving nothing away. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Lucas's magically amplified voice projected through the room. Please direct your attention to the screens, where you'll find some very interesting information about tonight's guest of honor. Murmurs rippled through the room as images began clicking through. Nolan embracing Marissa, the candid photos from business trips, incriminating financial records. With each damning reveal, the crowd's disbelief escalated into outraged gasps and shouts. Nolan stood frozen, face draining of color. His wide eyes found mine again, pleading and desperate. I gazed back, unmoved. The final slide appeared in bold text. Liar. Cheater. Fraud. A deafening cacophony erupted, the crowd advancing on Nolan with condemning cries. Over their heads, Ava stepped up onto the small stage I'd commandeered, amplifying her voice. My brother is not who you all believed. For over a year he has actively deceived his fiancé and manipulated everyone around him. The crowd roared in fury. Nolan shrank back, surrounded and confronted on all sides. I watched his empire crumble from the shadows, an odd hollow ache in my chest. It was over. My revenge complete, as Nolan desperately tried to salvage scraps of his ruined reputation. Security held back the raging mob as he was booed from the ballroom, career in tatters. I slipped outside alone, gulping the fresh night air. It was done. I'd succeeded in exposing his lies and destroying his perfect facade, so why didn't I feel victorious? I thought I'd find satisfaction in his downfall. But now there was only weariness. Was this hollow emptiness my true closure? Footsteps crunched on the pavement behind me. Ava. She wrapped a comforting arm around my shoulders. "No going back now," she said quietly. I nodded, swiping away a rogue tear. "It's for the best. He deserved it after everything he did." My voice didn't waver, but my heart ached with the finality of it all. I leaned into Ava's steady presence, leaving the ruins of my shattered dreams behind in the darkened gala hall. Morning light filtered through the curtains, stirring me from restless dreams. Today was supposed to be one of joyful anticipation, my wedding day. Instead, I woke alone and heavy-hearted. Rolling over, I unmuted my phone to find dozens of texts and missed calls from Nolan through the night, all desperate variations begging me to talk to him. Delete. A single text from Ava. "You okay?" I sent a quick, reassuring response before dragging myself from bed. The gala aftermath had stretched into the early morning hours, handling the press and providing statements. By the time I collapsed at home, exhaustion overruled any other emotion. But now, an odd detachment settled around me as I went through the motions of getting ready. Nolan's once pristine reputation was annihilated, my revenge complete. So why did this bitter taste still linger in my mouth? A news alert on my phone jolted me from my brooding. Disgraced business executive Nolan Reed responds to scandalous affair and fraud allegations. I stared fixedly at the header image of Nolan, haggard and red-eyed, a shell of his normally polished self. He denied the accusations against him in the brief statement, but it was clearly too little, too late. My finger hovered over the article before I shut the screen off, shaking my head sharply. Nothing he could say would undo the damage now. The bastard was getting exactly what he deserved. I met Ava at our favorite cafe, the normalcy of it soothing my frayed nerves. She commiserated over the dark circles under both our eyes, thanks to the gala drama stretching late. "How are you holding up?" she asked, searching my face with concern. I managed a weak but genuine smile. "As well as can be expected, I guess. It's still so surreal, but I'm okay." She nodded, covering my hand with hers, a silent show of support and understanding. My phone buzzed again with yet another string of unanswered pleas from Nolan. I silenced it grimly. "I have nothing left to say to him." Ava's eyes glinted with satisfaction. "Good. Now let's start putting that asshole in the rear view for good." Over the next week, maintaining my distance from Nolan turned out to be surprisingly easy. Cutting contact brought relief, not regret. His barrage of texts and calls eventually ceased when they went continuously ignored. I received an onslaught of interview requests from journalists eager to squeeze any remaining drops of scandal from the story, a tempting opportunity to twist the knife deeper. But ultimately, I declined them all. I'd said all I needed to that night at the gala when his web of lies unraveled. Slowly, life edged back towards normalcy. I threw myself into work, spent quality time with Ava and other dear friends, and even laughed sincerely again for the first time in longer than I could remember. Nolan had no place in this new life I was rebuilding. The rosy future I'd once envisioned with him was dead, but I was finally ready to move on. 2 months later, an innocuous white envelope in my mailbox initially puzzled me, but the elegant script addressing it to Miss Harper Lane made my chest clench. A final wedding invite, never retracted in the fallout. For a long moment, I considered tossing it unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside, a brief note in Nolan's untidy scrawl. "Harper, I know it's far too late for this, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am. I was a fool to hurt you. All I can do is try to become someone better, someone worthy of your forgiveness one day." I stared down at the page, a storm of emotions swirling through me. Then slowly, deliberately, I ripped the note and invite to pieces. Dropping the flakes of paper in the trash, I dusted off my hands. It was nothing but empty words. The manipulative tactics of a man desperate to salvage his own interests. I owed him nothing. Not a response. Not even my anger anymore. Shutting the past out with the slam of a door, I stepped forward into the light. The future was unfolding at last, and I would seize it with open arms. The autumn breeze swirled leaves across my path as I approached the familiar brownstone building. Pausing on the sidewalk, I steeled my nerves before pushing inside. The interior cafe was cozily lit, just a handful of patrons scattered at tables. My gaze landed on the hunched form in the back corner, staring fixedly into a steaming mug. Even disheveled and worn, Nolan still made my pulse quicken with anger. I wove between the tables until I stood across from his bowed head. He didn't look up. "You wanted to talk. So talk." My voice came out colder than expected. His reddened eyes finally lifted to meet mine. Something like shame flickered across his gaunt features. This shadow of the man I'd loved was almost pitiable. Almost. "Harper." He seemed to search for what to say. "Thank you for giving me a chance to explain." My harsh laugh cut him off. "Explain?" "There's nothing to explain, Nolan. You lied and manipulated me for over a year. You broke my trust and betrayed our relationship in every possible way." He flinched. "I know, and I'm so deeply sorry for all of it. I was weak and selfish, but I never meant to hurt you." "Well, you did," I snapped. "You humiliated me, made me question my own judgment, worth. I was ready to spend my life with you, and you threw it all away, without even caring." Tears shimmered in his eyes. "I did care, Harper. I know I can never undo the damage I caused, but please, if there's any way." His voice cracked. I sucked in a harsh breath, steadying myself. "Do you realize your little mistake cost me my job, my reputation, nearly everything I'd worked for? Your lies had massive consequences." He hung his head. "You're right. I was blind, only thinking of myself. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I needed you to know how sorry I am, how much I regret all of it." His voice dropped to a tortured whisper. "Especially losing you." For a long moment the gulf of hurt and anger yawned between us. I let the silence stretch, watching him wrestle with remorse. He had lost everything because of his own actions, reality he'd finally been forced to confront. "Maybe one day, far from now, I can forgive you." Nolan's eyes lifted with a glimmer of desperate hope. "But I will never forget, and we will never be part of each other's lives again." His face crumpled. "I understand." I stood abruptly, shoulder bags scraping the chair. "Goodbye, Nolan." I didn't look back as I pushed outside into the bracing air. The bitter taste of closure lingered in my mouth, but with it came a sense of finality. An aching chapter of my life was finally closed for good. A waiting car pulled up to the curb. I slid gratefully into the warmth of the backseat in Ava's steady presence. She searched my face. "How did it go?" I let out a slow breath, gazing out the window as we pulled away. "He's remorseful, but it doesn't change anything." She nodded. "Do you feel better getting that off your chest, at least?" I considered the question, rolling it over. Did unloading my hurt and anger onto Nolan lift the weight I'd carried these long months? "I think so," I finally said. It wasn't for his sake, but mine, to say what I needed to and make it final. Closure was painfully necessary in order to heal and move forward. Ava squeezed my hand in understanding, leaving the grief over my shattered dreams behind in that sad little cafe. I turned my eyes to the future, towards the possibilities and joy waiting to be built on the ashes of the past. Morning light filtered into my bedroom, stirring me from a contented sleep. I blinked slowly, a smile touching my lips. Today marked 1 month since I'd seen or spoken to Nolan. 1 month of rebuilding and looking ahead instead of back. Rolling from bed, I went through my morning routine with newfound lightness. Even mundane tasks like making coffee felt more vibrant lately. The lingering shadows cast by Nolan's betrayal had finally begun to lift. My phone buzzed with a text from Ava. "Dinner at 7? Have news." I sent a quick confirmation before heading to work, curiosity piqued by her cryptic message. Good news was abundant lately. Lucas launching his tech startup, Andre meeting a lovely woman at the gym, Mia earning a long-overdue promotion. My friend's happiness brought me nearly as much joy as my own. Work passed quickly, my motivation renewed. Helping guide struggling teens and families through therapy was difficult, often heart-wrenching work. But the challenging cases no longer exhausted me as before. Each small breakthrough and step forward felt like another sun ray penetrating the darkness. Closing up my office for the day, I decided to walk to the restaurant to meet Ava, enjoying the crisp autumn evening. I smiled softly at the couples hand in hand, families laughing together, friends chatting over restaurant patios. For the first time in a long while, there was no twinge of resentment or loneliness. Just a simple appreciation for these little slices of human connection around me. Ava waved from our booth, beaming as I slid in across from her. "You look amazing," she said, eyes dancing. "Practically glowing." I laughed. "I'm just happy. Things are finally looking up." Sobering, I leaned forward. "So what's your news?" She paused, biting her lip conspiratorially. "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, but I got offered an incredible job with one of the top interior design firms in Milan." My jaw dropped. "Ava, that's incredible. Oh my God, I'm so thrilled for you." We both squealed, clutching each other's hands tightly across the table amidst the curious glances of other patrons. As we gushed over the details of the job, my excitement was tempered only slightly by the realization it would take her halfway around the world, just when I'd come to rely on my closest friend. Of course I swallowed back the selfish words, chiding myself. "You have to take it," I said firmly. "This is your dream, everything you've worked for." She bit her lip again. "It is, but only if you're sure you'll be okay without me here." Worry flickered in her eyes. My chest swelled with love for her. "I'll be more than okay. You've helped get me through the darkness, and now it's time to follow your own dreams." I squeezed her hands, vision blurring with tears. "Go be extraordinary." We clung to each other fiercely outside the restaurant, my joy for her overruling the looming pain of absence. With Ava pursuing her passions halfway around the globe and life chugging cheerily along, the next phase of my independent journey was beginning. I was finally ready to stand and move forward on my own 2 feet, to embrace the possibilities and potential waiting ahead, unencumbered by the past's hurt. The future stretched before me, bright and beautiful. A fierce chill lingered in the late winter air as I hurried down the icy sidewalks. Tugging my scarf tighter, I smiled against the biting wind. Despite the frigid temperatures, my steps felt light. Ducking into the cozy cafe, I spotted Mia waving from our usual table. Sliding into the chair across from her, I sighed blissfully as warmth returned to my numb fingers clutching the hot mug. "Sorry I'm late, the weather is just miserable out there today." I laughed, shaking off snowflakes from my hat and coat. Mia smiled sympathetically. "No worries at all. I'm just glad we could meet up." We launched eagerly into catching up, her big projects at work, my challenging but rewarding new clients, our weekend plans. It had been a few weeks since we'd found time to connect outside of group events, and I'd sorely missed our long chats. As we strolled slowly from the cafe afterwards, neither ready for the afternoon to end, Mia gave me a thoughtful look. "You seem really happy lately, Harper." I blinked, but realized she was right. The anger and hurt from the past year's struggles had finally begun to fade into perspective. "I am," I said reflectively. "Still taking it week by week, but life is good again." She looped her arm through mine with a soft smile. "You're radiant. It's so nice to see after, well, everything." I knew she was remembering the darkest days after Nolan's betrayal, when the ground cracked beneath me. Swallowing the lingering bitterness of that time, I squeezed her arm. "It wasn't easy, but I think I'm finally in a healthy place again. And that's what matters." Mia nodded firmly. "Onwards and upwards. Oh, did you hear about Nolan?" I shook my head, keeping my tone neutral. I hadn't spared him more than a passing thought in months. "Apparently, he sold his company and is moving halfway across the country for a fresh start." She sniffed disdainfully. "Probably for the best. Get him away from the mess he created here." I remained silent as we walked. News of his plans didn't spark any strong emotion in me, only dull acceptance. We had carved our separate paths long ago. Mia shot me a worried look, clearly regretting bringing up my ex-fiancé, but I simply squeezed her arm again, offering a small reassuring smile. His choices no longer affected me. My life was wholly my own now. We parted with fierce hugs, Mia's kind eyes still holding traces of concern. But I carried the lightness from our visit close as I walked home alone. Letting myself into my cozy apartment, I breathed it in like a balm. Solo movies nights, quiet weekends with books and tea, discovering new favorite cafes and shops on long wandering walks. This space was my sanctuary. Curled on the plush couch with a soft throw blanket and steaming mug, I gazed around at the life I'd rebuilt. Through the storms, I found myself again. stronger for it. Wise enough now to recognize real love as something steady and true, not a tempest of highs and lows. Patience had gifted me that insight. My phone buzzed with incoming messages from friends eager to meet up soon. Smiling softly, I tapped out enthusiastic responses. My roots were firm in this community that lifted me up through hard times and celebrated my joys. The past still whispered its ghosts, but I honored the grief and hurt for the growth they brought, and I stepped eagerly towards the future now unfolding before me, bright with possibility.